All of that like enables us to go to the future with more feature, like more capabilities. So now what we will be doing is that we will be offering our customers, our merchants, the ability to have funding and loans from Foodics directly. We do pre-qualification for our merchants. We know who is like the risky ones, who are not the risky, and then we can extend loans to them within 2 hours. Versus like if they want to have a loan from the current banks, they need to go in a process which is like more 3 to 4 weeks, and most likely they will be rejected because they don't have the financial statements and all of that. Here, like we there's an algorithm that do credit rating, and then the payment itself or the repayment can be done from the payment terminal. So it's a full solution, and that's all because of this integration between the payment and the SaaS, which like again brings Foodics to the position that be one of the biggest SaaS companies and the fintech company as well.
This is amazing. Okay, so a lot to unpack here. I'm really excited. Is this thing on?
Yesterday's price is not today's price.
Hey, welcome back to Run the Numbers, the podcast that you would love to give 5 stars to right now. Woo! This conversation is with Abdullah Tahboub, the CFO of Foodics. He went from a very large telecom company where he was meeting with ministers in Jordan to a team of 4 in Saudi. So this guy picked up his family and his life, moved to a different country, and joined tech at a company that was small at the time. Foodics is now an amazingly successful company in the Middle East. Think about it kind of like Toast, but for the restaurant industry out there. And he breaks down what the differences are between being a CFO in the corporate world versus the startup world. He's been in both, and how spending his time is different. I found that part fascinating. He gives a deep dive into the food and beverage industry, the state of it today, and all of the things that are going on in Saudi right now, from amusement parks to stadiums to major infrastructure projects. That impacts the entire economy, especially for people that eat food. That's everybody. Then he takes us through Foodics' business model, how it's evolved since it first launched, and guess what? Payments. They got payments, baby. We go into payments in the crawl, walk, run for any CFO who's looking to add payments to their stack. All this and much, much more after a short word from our sponsors. What does the future hold for business? Ask 9 experts and you'll get 10 answers. Bull market, bear market. Rates will rise, rates will fall. Can someone please just invent a crystal ball already? Until then, over 40,000 businesses have future-proofed their companies with NetSuite by Oracle, the #1 cloud ERP, bringing accounting, financial management, inventory, HR into one fluid platform. With one unified business management suite, there's one source of truth, giving you the visibility and control you need to make quick decisions. With real-time insights and forecasting, you're peering into the future with actionable data. Whether you're closing the books in days, not weeks, you're spending less time looking backwards and more time on what's next. If you listen to this podcast, you'll know I ask CFOs all the time to rep their tech stacks, and I would say almost every one of them use NetSuite. And that's what I would use too. Whether you're a company earning millions or even hundreds of millions, NetSuite helps you respond to immediate challenges and seize your biggest opportunities. Speaking of opportunity, download the CFO's Guide to AI and Machine Learning at netsuite.com/metrics. The guide is free to you. That is netsuite.com/metrics. Ooh, yeah, it's netsuite.com/metrics. Please, guys, I really need this. Does your revenue recognition process feel like a total guessing game? Step right up and pick a card, any card. You're not alone. Revenue accounting is getting more complex, especially with subscription models, usage-based billing, and evolving compliance standards. Woohoo! RightRev is here to help you gain control over your revenue accounting. RightRev automates the revenue recognition process from end to end. Whether it's multi-element arrangements, subscription renewals, or complex usage-based contracts, RightRev takes care of it all. That means fewer spreadsheets, fewer errors, and more time for your team to focus on growth. Customers like Snowflake, Logic Monitor, and Epicor chose RightRev to manage their high volume and complex revenue accounting. CFOs can see the bigger picture faster without being held up by their team's reporting nightmares. You know me, I'm a business model fanatic. And don't get me wrong, I love all the evolutions. We've got self-serve revenue, usage-based revenue, and now even success-based revenue, you name it. But that doesn't make it any easier for us being counters on the back end to keep score. RightRev is like a cheat code for staying ahead of revenue complexities. So you're ready to transform your revenue accounting? Visit rightrev.com to schedule a demo. That's rightrev.com and tell them your boy CJ sent you. RightRev, modern revenue recognition simplified. Oh yeah. Ready to plan confidently, close faster, and report with accuracy? Here's what sets Planful apart. Imagine purpose-built solutions for every department, from FP&A to accounting, marketing to HR, all with built-in financial intelligence. It's easy to implement Planful in just weeks with minimal IT involvement, enabling seamless collaboration across your organization's key financial workflows. Best of all, Planful grows with you. Its unmatched scalability ensures that no matter how fast your business expands, Planful can keep up. See why over 1,500 customers worldwide choose Planful as their flexible, user-friendly, end-to-end financial performance management platform. Visit planful.com/metrics to see how you can elevate your team this year with Planful. They will hook you up. It is planful.com/metrics. Tell me your boy CJ sent you. Planful.com/metrics. Abdullah, welcome to the Run the Numbers podcast.
Hey, how are you?
Where in the world do I find you today, my friend?
So I'm in Riyadh now. It's the beautiful capital of Saudi.
Awesome. So this podcast is truly going worldwide here. And if I have it right, you went from a very large telecom company where you're meeting with ministers in Jordan, you had this massive team, and then you made this kind of bold transition to a team of 4 in Saudi. And you went to a smaller business, but also a new country, a new business model, a new industry. From a personal perspective, I mean, how did you take that leap of faith?
So yes, a lot of people called me crazy. Like by that time, I think most of my friends, my colleagues, everyone like saying, Abdullah, what you are doing? Like again, like you are the second man of a big telecom company in Jordan. We have a $250 million of revenues, and then I'm moving to this company that basically nobody heard about. But I think that's where it comes to like multiple factors. I think the most important one is my personality. I'm a person who like always to have new challenges. I'm a very competitive person as well, so I like always to challenge myself and try something new. So that's on one perspective. On the other hand, a lot of what's happening in Saudi. So Saudi is becoming an innovation and entrepreneurship hub. The government with the Vision 2030 vision have a big focus on the startup scene. So I think it was like a great opportunity for me to try all of that. In addition, Foodics as a company was of like at that time there wasn't a lot of startups, but Foodics at that time was a company that proved its success. It was at like Series A at that time, and it has two great founders. So I told myself, why not to leave my comfort zone and join the Foodics?
I have to commend you on taking that risk. I mean, you get to kind of write your story in reverse order, which is always nice. But like at the time, that is kind of a scary leap of faith to take. You know, going from something that seems like a sure thing to something that's riskier. You're a CFO. Do you think CFOs take enough risk in their careers?
So the point is, like, as CFOs, we are really trained to mitigate risk. So that's something that we do like day and night. We are like responsible of risk management and reduce the risk to the maximum, like minimum possible. And that start going into our like personality, like in our life. And I think that's as a CFO, we need to be, yes, like we have to maintain that being cautious to risk, but we need to do it in a more balanced approach. I think once you have that opportunity to take some risk, I think you should consider it. And we should use our mindset to calculate the risk. If you believe that risk is reasonable, I would advise people to take that risk. And like reflecting back, like now 5 years after I took my decision, I think it was one of the greatest decision I ever made. Like I think yes, it was risky, but that's where we have always the say you should have the no pain no gain, and like you should have that risk and return thing. So yeah, it's, from time to time, I think I advise my colleagues in the CFOs to take that risk.
Do you have a lot of friends that come to you and say, Abdullah, I'm thinking about moving from this big corporate company to something smaller? Like, how did you look at this situation?
Absolutely. And I think, actually, me personally, I think I managed to convince a lot of my friends to leave their comfort zone, to leave the big corporates that they used to work in, and join startups. So I have at least two of my friends who joined startups because like I pushed them to go there and introduce them to the founders, and now I think they are very thankful. So I'm really happy with what I'm doing.
Yeah. I think the biggest question that I would ask, from the outside in is, what are the expectations? How do they vary from being a CFO in this corporate world versus the startup world?
So it can't be more different. So in the corporate life, you spend most of your time in risk management, governance, board preparations, spending lengthy time on preparing a business case that you need to take to the approval committee and all of that governance, in addition to politics, which I really, really hate. But unfortunately, it's part of the corporate life, and like everybody knows it. While in startups, it's completely different. To start with, there's no time for politics, which is great. Politics, I hate it. I think it just takes you slow, and like you spend your resources or like your brain in unnecessary work. But most important, I think, in the startup life, you are responsible to, like, you have multiple hats. So in one day, yes, you are a CFO. The second day, you work closely with the chief operation officer, and like focusing on how you can grow sales and commission schemes and all of that. Third day, you are thinking about your expansion strategy. Fourth day, you talk with the founders on which product we should focus on. And like, of course, you spend a lot of time in fundraising activities, scaling up of like systems and all of that. So it's you have multiple hats, and that's actually what I really like about working with startups.
I think it's not just the time of how you spend it on your calendar, but it's also the time of the feedback loop associated with decisions you make. So as a CFO, one thing that can always be frustrating is you make these big decisions, and then sometimes you got to wait 6 months, 12 months, 18 months to figure out, well, was that a good decision I made? And I think in the corporate world, it does take longer to figure out if it was good or bad. In the startup world, you can see your imprints in the business faster.
Yeah, and I like, in the corporate life, all decision that you will take is like just incremental impact. Like it's always minimal impact. It's like whatever you do, it's a 10%, 5% increase in sales, growth, or cost reduction, and all of that. While literally in the startup life, one decision can take your company 2x and 3x. And like you create your babies. Like you have a lot of babies that you keep nourishing and seeing them are growing, which in most of cases you cannot have the same in corporate life. However, still like there are some interesting facts about corporate. If you are a CFO who focus on business, you can drive big initiatives. So that's always a possibility, but that's like the exception. While in startup life, that you will do that every day. You will see like a decision you took like yesterday with the impact in 1 month, and it's a continuous process of really witnessing all the impact of the initiatives and decisions that you have taken.
And I also think that how you spend your time with people outside of other departments, it's less formalized, and it's a lot faster of like an iteration cycle being at a startup, where I've worked at big companies too. And it felt like I had to like step through all this bureaucracy to like set up a meeting with product, where it's like, can we just talk through this right now?
Absolutely. And that's actually very, very important. So like you just said it correctly in the corporate life, like each department, like you have the finance department, a big department, you have your floor or 2 floors where like all finance employees and all of that. Yeah. Well, nowadays I'm in my office, and like if you see just like 1 meter next to me is the chief operation officer, and another 1 meter is the chief technical officer. And once we need to make a decision, it's just I step down I go from my office to their office and like start talking, and all decisions are taken that way. And that's, by the way, one of the things me personally, I advocate always working in office. I'm not really advocating this remote working. I personally, I don't think it's really working. And the main reason is behind that like once you are all in the office, you can make decision way much faster versus the position like where like you have to set up a Zoom meeting and you need to make sure everybody's there and so on. Here in our culture, at least in Foodics, all decisions are like taking very fast. So we meet together, like anything, we can like have a quick meeting, a quick decisions, and we move on, rather than like having all the setup of like different meetings and all of that.
This may be a weird question, and we can strike it if you don't have a hot take on it. But you'd brought up the existence of politics in any company earlier. Do you think politics exists more in an in-office culture than a virtual culture, or it doesn't really matter? It's a representative of the company, no matter how they work.
So, I think politics is not related really to that setup. I think it's more of the culture. It's the top management, what they really influence the other employees. So I think like our employees, if they see that the top management is well aligned, like all the discussions, there's no hidden agenda behind all of these discussions, I think they will really avoid going in politics. I think politics starts when, like, I'm as a CFO, I have my personal agenda versus other CFOs. Like, you don't have a common goal. Like, and that's another thing I really like about startups. So, like, in corporate life, most likely you are very concerned about your career growth. You want to get promoted and so on. While in the startup life, your main focus is to grow the company, because everybody is well vested in the company. They have their shares. They are owners. They are the real owners of the company. They are the shareholders of the company. So that's where everybody's working together to maximize the value of that company. Versus in the corporate life, it's more of everybody wants to maintain like their budgets, their career growth, and all of that.
Yes, build a massive team.
Exactly. It's very different.
That's a good take. I want to transition to talk about the food and beverage industry for a bit, because I'm so fascinated by what's going on here and how technology is innovating or how technology is enabling a lot of these companies. So if you could just do an overview, I mean, what's the state of the food and beverage industry today?
The main thing is all the digital transformation. So if you see like 10 years ago, it's like when we talk about systems, it was all like many restaurants, like even they don't have a system now, and like the restaurant that have a system, it will be on-premise system with limited capabilities. Now everybody's shifting to the cloud, and the cloud gives like unlimited capabilities. Like it's all integrated systems, a lot of integrations happening from all system, and like all strong APIs that connects different systems together, which is creating great opportunities. So that's from the systems point of view. In addition to creating a new business model, so we see now the cloud kitchens, the dark stores, and all of that, which was not there. And again, this is happening because of the digital enablement. So the fact that all restaurants now integrated with food aggregators and delivery companies enables basically the concept of dark kitchens to evolve more and more. We see a more investment in the franchisee business as well, where like previously it was like each restaurant have 1 store, 2 stores. Now we can see that franchisee, and that's happening a lot in Saudi. Like as a company, like again, we are providing we have 30% market share in Saudi. We see a lot of restaurants. They start with 1 store, and now like in 2 years they have more than 80 and 90 stores, which is like we are really proud to have our merchants like going off this huge growth.
Hey, thanks for listening. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors. Well, if you've listened to this podcast before, you definitely know that I think it's cool to be a fan of business. I'm obsessed with researching how the best companies operate, and specifically how they manage their money. And I've learned that a company's financial stack can make the difference between world domination and obscurity. That's why I want to tell you about Brex, because I want you to rule the world. Brex is an impressive financial services and software company that has grown immensely since it was founded in 2017. In just the last year alone, Brex accelerated customer acquisition by 50%, with 91% growth in enterprise customers. And there's good reason that over 30,000 companies from startups to enterprises have flocked to Brex. Brex offers the world's smartest corporate card on a full-stack global platform that is everything CFOs need to manage their finances on an elite level. Plus, they offer modern banking and treasury, as well as intuitive expenses and accounting automation, bill pay, and travel. Wow, it's all in the roster whenever you need it. Brex grows with you. CFOs tell me all the time that Brex makes it easy to control spend before it happens, automate annoying tasks, and optimize their finances. Because listen, at the end of the day, Brex helps them make every dollar count. So if you're a fan of smart businesses too, check out Brex at brex.com/metrics. That's brex.com/metrics. Trust isn't earned, it's demanded. Whether you're a startup founder navigating your first audit or a seasoned security professional scaling your GRC program, proving your commitment to security has never been more critical or complex. That's where Vanta comes in. Businesses use Vanta to establish trust by automating compliance needs across over 35 frameworks, like SOC 2 and ISO 27001. Centralized security workflows, complete questionnaires up to 5 times faster, and proactively manage vendor risk. Vanta not only saves you time, it can also save you money. A new IDC white paper found that Vanta customers achieve $535,000 per year in benefits, and the platform pays for itself in just 3 months. Join over 9,000 global companies like Atlassian, Cora, and Factory, who use Vanta to manage risk and improve security in real time. For a limited time, our audience gets $1,000 off Vanta at vanta.com/metrics. That's vanta.com/metrics for $1,000 off. Here's a question. Do you feel like you're wasting time and energy on contract renewals or tracking shadow IT spend or, this is a bad one, explaining rising software costs to the board? Truth is, traditional spend management is broken. That's where Tropic comes in. Tropic is an intelligent spend management solution that consolidates your spend data and processes into one unified offering, enabling insights and decisive action. It doesn't just show you where the problems are, it helps you solve them. From spotting hidden optimization opportunities like duplicative spend to automating those painful procurement workflows to giving you the best market data that turns every vendor negotiation in your favor. I'm a Tropic customer myself. I've been using them for over a year, and I love their price checks. They allow me to see if I'm getting a fair market deal instantly. And I'm proud to say that I am no longer using my email as our company's contract repository. I've got every document and renewal neatly organized in my Tropic portal. Isn't it time to turn spend management into your competitive advantage? Visit tropicapp.io/mostlymetrics to see what's possible when intelligence drives your decisions. tropicapp.io/mostlymetrics. Wow, 30% market share. That's wild. And I understand that you're deeply rooted in the Middle East and North Africa. I mean, what's unique about the food and beverage and the tech there that may be different than other parts of the world?
So I think like one of the what you can see in the region is many things. Of course, digital transformation. So it's have a faster base because again 5 years ago there was all of this. There was no systems at all. They were depending on a very basic calculators to manage their business. Now everybody wants to have a proper cloud solution. So that's one. But also what's happening here also the evolvement of cashless economies. So I recall once I joined Foodics, around 25% of transactions were cashless, processed by card, either debit or credit. Nowadays, 65% of transactions are cashless, basically. And that's not even cashless. They are all based on the tap technology, not even the card insertion. So it's evolving very, very fast. And we see a 2-digit growth in most of our regions that we are operating in. So in Saudi, we are having around 12-13% growth year over year. And that's, of course, with all the support of the government and all the initiatives that are taking place here. But yes, it's a huge change in the dynamics.
And there's a lot going on in Saudi right now. I mean, from these huge amusement parks, stadiums, major infrastructure projects. Does that help with business growth if you're serving people food?
Absolutely. So it's driving many things. The first one, the economy is becoming more diversified. So Saudi was very dependent on oil and gas. Now,
Sure.
With the introduction all of this, we see the entertainment projects taking place everywhere, from all the amusement park, all the Red Sea projects. And so even in Riyadh, huge projects they're establishing a 130-kilometer sport boulevard where it's it's an opportunity for everybody to have sport in that boulevard, but also it will have a lot of coffee shops and all of that in that area. So that's one. And of course, the growth in the economy itself, it means more cash inflow and more disposable income in the hands of people, which is again reflecting in a stronger GDP and more spend for F&B.
That totally makes sense. I worked in Boston in an area called the Seaport District for a number of years, and there were buildings that were going up where the construction people would basically, you could work basically your entire career just on one block if you just went from one building to the next. And we used to always joke that if you want to get the best sandwich in town, just look at whatever bag the construction guy is carrying back, because they always had the best taste for like where to go get a good sub.
Yes.
I want to talk about the business model a bit. So how has Foodic's business model evolved since its first launch? I mean, you were there pretty early on, and I'm sure you didn't have all the revenue streams that you have now.
Yeah, so when Foodic started like 10 years ago, the main focus was to build a cashier system. As we mentioned, that there was no cash systems at all, or if any, it was on-premise system. So the founders like initially focused on building a robust cashier system and like a cashier system that also can work in multiple locations and all of that integrations. So that was like number one task, and that was the focus. And then they start adding modules one after another on the top of the cashier system, which we refer to as the source of truth. So they added the inventory, the kitchen display system, and all of these modules. Then they created a marketplace, which was a very important also addition to the system, because Foodic become like integrated with many other systems, including loyalty, delivery systems, and all of that. And then by time, and I think the most important point was like in 2020, where Foodic was like the first company in the region to get the payment license. So Foodic at that time, like previously, it was all SaaS offering. It was like purely focusing on SaaS and increasing their market share in the region. Then we got the payment license. And by having the payment license, we unlocked a lot of opportunities. So to start with, we start with providing the payment terminals, which is integrated with our cashier system. So previously, before Foodic's time, the cashier, like you have to have a separate payment terminal, and they need to punch the order in the system and then punch the payment, the amount of the order on that payment terminal. There was no integration at all. So we start by providing these payment terminals and providing that integrated solution, which like helped a lot also our merchants by having like end of day reports reconciled, and they know how much exactly the cash flow, what transaction unsettled, and so on. And then we start adding more blocks over this two solutions. So we start having the waiter application, which is also payment enabled. We have self-service kiosks, the one that you see in the like big restaurants, and like you can have your order and do self-checkout and all of that. And then all of that like enables us to go to the future with more feature, like more capabilities. So now what we will be doing is that we will be offering our customers, our merchants, the ability to have funding and loans from Foodic directly in 2 hours. And that's basically, we built an algorithm where we can do a credit rating for our customers. And by having that solution, we do a pre-qualification for our merchants. We know who is like the risky ones, who are not the risky, and then we can extend loans to them within 2 hours. Versus like if they want to have a loan from the current banks, they need to go in a process which is like more 3 to 4 weeks, and most likely they will be rejected because they don't have the financial statements and all of that. Here, like because again, like we know we there's an algorithm that do credit rating, and then the payment itself of the repayment can be done from the payment terminal. So it's a full solution, and that's all because of this integration between the payment and the SaaS, which like again brings Foodic to the position that be one of the biggest SaaS companies and the fintech company as well.
This is amazing. Okay, so a lot to unpack here. I'm really excited. Let's go back to starting with the cashiers. Why was that the right insertion point?
At that time, Foodic need to increase its footprint, and we need to make sure that we build a system that is very robust. Again, like previously, again in my work in telecommunication, there was a lot of experience available in the market. Now, when you go to the Foodic part, like building Foodic, there is no playbook that you can refer to. It's something that you need to build from scratch. There is no resources available. So you need to make sure that once you build that, you build it the correct way and need to focus on this one. And that was the major focus in the early years. So they built a very robust system. And we're talking about a cloud system. So you need to give the trust to your merchant that that cloud system will not collapse. It's something that they can really rely on. So, and that gives Foodic the ability to grow its market share in the region, having the source of truth everywhere, and then all add-ons or upselling can happen at later stage. But it was very
Yeah.
important to build that, first of all, customer base and a really stable product. And that's what is differentiating Foodic from any other competitors now in the region, that we have the best system, we have the most stable system, and we have the biggest market share. So yeah, it was absolutely the right move.
And I want to flag that for listeners because I can't understate the importance of being the source of truth or the center of gravity within the tech stack there, because it allows you all these other opportunities to expand from there. But like, if you don't get that right, you don't earn kind of the ability to add the other modules.
100%, 100%. Because like, again, like all other modules can be built on the cashier, but it's not vice versa. So you can have the accounting system on the top of your cashier system. You can have the payroll system. You can have the loyalty system. You have all other system built on your system. You can have that deep insight, like the advanced BI, but it cannot be done the other way around.
And then what was the inflection point in your business expansion? I heard you say something about a payments license.
Yeah, so it is the payment. So at that time, like again, like Foodic was only a SaaS company. Once we have the payment, Foodic became a SaaS and fintech company. And as I mentioned, it enabled us to provide a lot of products, including the lending and even going way more advanced services, including the cash management, spend management. You know, our merchants on average, they visit their dashboard 12 times a day. So basically through that dashboard, like we will be enabling our customers to view all their statements and eliminating the need basically to access their bank account. Like they can do everything from our console.
And it sounds like if you add payments, you're getting multiple bites at the apple on potentially the same transaction, right? Like you're diversifying your revenue streams
100%.
and you're more in the way of the money.
100%. So of course we have all the SaaS revenue, but now Foodic is processing around $1 billion of GMV on a monthly basis. And that's, of course, is monetizable GMV because like if you provide the payment terminal, you can monetize all of this huge volume of transactions. So it's a great revenue opportunity.
And it sounds like it just starts with payments. You can go further than that. So what's next in terms of adding new offerings for Foodic?
So as I mentioned, like we will be adding the lending services and we will be adding the spend management and then all other solutions that can be built, all of course, on the top of those two.
And there are other vertical software companies out there trying to figure out like what their crawl, walk, run will be for payments and for becoming a fintech product. Can you explain like what lending is in this specific industry?
So if we talk about the fintech, like you need, first of all, to understand, you need to lay a very strong foundation. So it's very important to focus on the point that we are dealing here with the cash flow of the restaurants. So it's very important. It's
Sure.
very like one of the very important factors that you need to gain the trust of your merchants. You need to make sure that they understand that there is no missing cash at the end of the day, because like, again, you are dealing with their revenue. They're the most important thing. So it's very important you start with a very strong foundation. You have a very strong partners, because as a payment company or fintech company, you will have the banks as your partners. So it's very important to have a very strong banks to back you. And then you need to understand the full ecosystem and the regulations. Here in Saudi, we have SAMA, which is the central bank of Saudi. It's very they have all the governance rules and all the regulation that you have to comply with. So it's very important to understand what's going on. And then you start scaling the business one step by another. So you start doing more automation. You give your customers more insights to the business. And you need to have the discipline to keep monitoring the KPIs. So you need to make sure that, for example, how fast you do the settlement, any errors in settlement, all of these KPIs, the churn of your customers, and all of these KPIs related to payment business, you need to have the discipline to keep monitoring them day by day. Because again, we are talking about it's not like the SaaS business. You're talking about the cash. And then once you start expanding and scaling the business, you can add a lot of opportunities that we talked about, lending and spend management. And once you talk about lending, you talk about a very strong credit scoring model that you need to build. You need to also test it thoroughly. So you cannot go and like do scale lending and then you are like stuck with a lot of bad debts. So you need to build it one block by another and make sure that you have a very strong credit module. Now here also the machine learning and AI is very important because you can also have this in your built in within your model, understand what's working and what's not working, and you keep adjusting. The nice thing about like working in our model is that the data that is provided is like there's huge data that you can analyze and build your credit scoring model based on. And all of that should be always reflected in your credit scoring model and keep optimizing that model.
And that's what excited me about hearing about the lending roadmap, because you're so well positioned with the data you have from the customer. I mean, you know how much sales they're doing, you know everything about the business, that like, why wouldn't you be well positioned to make a good call on if this is a good candidate?
Exactly. And that's the big differentiation between us and the banks. So banks will rely on the data that the merchants provide versus in our case, we have all the algorithms built in the system and it really do the filter and the credit scoring directly.
And so you have both SaaS and payment revenue streams, right? We hit on that SaaS came first, but how do you think about balancing growth in both of these? Does it sounds like SaaS has to come before payments in terms of the roadmap, but now you as a CFO, you're sitting there looking at all the revenue coming into the business. How do you look at where you're going to spend your time and what you're going to optimize for?
So definitely it's like we will continue, of course, focusing on the SaaS. Like it's our like the main thing was SaaS, so it's a revenue stream that, of course, will continue growing. There's a lot of opportunities in the SaaS, as I mentioned. Like you can create all of new modules that will upsell, but payment is the name of the game for the coming at least 5 years. So our main focus is increasing our penetration rate and spreading like having higher attachment rate of our payment terminals, and of course start offering the lending the Foodic Capital to all our customers and keep optimizing the service, and then adding more features, including the spend management to our customers. So ultimately, we believe that if we look at the total revenue, it will be like 50-50 coming from SaaS and another 50 coming from the payment business. We believe in that. Yes.
If I was an investor, would I look at the revenue from SaaS being just as valuable as the revenue from payments? Like, is all revenue created equal in that sense?
Yes, very much. And like, you know, when you look at the revenue, like the most important thing of the SaaS business, it's like there is high probability of it's a recurring revenue, correct? And that's why like there's the annual recurring revenue as one of the most important KPIs or like unit economics in our business. Now, the beautiful thing of the payment, it's transactional, but it's also can be forecasted in a similar way of the SaaS business. And that's because once you create that integration between the payment business and the SaaS, the customer most likely will have a very high, like even actually the stickiness will increase because now the customer like depends completely on our services. So it's become as recurring revenue as the subscription. And that's the beauty in the model, that you create a transactional revenue where you have the benefit of like the business is growing and then you are having that cut from that business, but also it's very predictable and it's recurring revenue because it's associated with that customer.
Can you say more about the forecasting associated with payments? Because if I was a CFO looking to get into this for the first time, I mean, that would keep me up at night knowing like, listen, I know how much I'm getting from SaaS, but like, how do I go into this having somewhat of a reliable forecast of the payments component?
Well, that's what you learn from your experience. So here in our region, you need to understand seasonality. So, for example, we have the holy month of Ramadan, where, like, in the first 20 days, we witness a sharp decrease in volumes because of the behavior of people who go more like stay at houses and like after 8 or 9 they will go and have some coffee shops and so on. And then in the last 10 days of the holy month, they will start going more and more to restaurants, and then we will see an increase in spending. And then like there is the month of for example, in September, where it's the back to school month, and you will see that the disposable income decrease significantly. That like people start like allocating more of their money finance the back to school operations versus going person and so on. So what you need to build, like you need to understand the customer behavior. That's very important. And you need to keep this in your mind once you build your forecast, because there are very clear patterns that happens. And then, of course, there's association between your targets, like what merchants our sales team is targeting and how much is their total GMV. Like, are they targeting the big ones or the small ones? But like then you have a lot of data that you can build your forecast on. Like again, like being fortunate and like being in the business for 10 years, we can build a very strong forecasting models based on all of these factors.
So, Abdullah, understanding customer behavior and quirks in business model seasonality is one of my favorite pastimes. Like, I totally dork out on this stuff. So, what you were saying about the month of when Ramadan occurs and then back to school, it totally resonated with me, because being a CFO at a marketplace business in the automotive sector, we would see when kids go back to school, like nobody's getting their car fixed because they need the car on the road to drive Johnny or Timmy to soccer practice. And then when Christmas rolls around, everybody is putting a lot of money on their credit card to pay for gifts. So they don't want to go and get their exhaust fixed. But then when they get their tax return back in the March or April timeframe, they got some extra cash in their pocket, and that's when sales spike. So it's just like every business has these interesting rhythms to it, and you need to get some quarters under your belt to fully understand how customers behave.
100%. And we see that like year after year. So like there's like similar to your example, like in the month of November, there's like 1 week of school holidays, and we see like the spend like goes like crazy because everybody's taking vacations and like staying in Saudi, and like you see like everybody's going to restaurants and coffee shops, and like big spike in the GMV. And so that's where like you need to build that models where you can really capture this data and make sure they are reflected in your forecasting models.
And if I was a CFO who's trying to staff my go-to-market motion with enough bandwidth to sell both SaaS and payments, how does that work? Do you have the same people internally at Foodics that are responsible for like a restaurant, getting them on both SaaS and payments, or do you break it up in terms of responsibilities?
No, you have to have great specialized team. Like the guys who are responsible for the fintech business, they need to have a strong understanding again like of the specific regulations related to that industry.
Yeah.
Versus the guys responsible for the SaaS. That's very important. And also you are talking about different challenges that like we have to solve for our customers. So when it's SaaS, it's more our systems and like they are asking for certain features, versus in payments, they are more concerned about the settlement and like more concepts and more terminology related to the payment business. So you need to create that specialization. And with a company in our at our scale, you need to make sure that really you provide the best service to your customers. So you need to create those specialized teams who can address these concerns in a proper way.
That's such a good explanation, because I feel like from the outside in, a lot of CFOs like, oh, well, if I had payments to this, like I can raise the quotas of all my sales reps. But it's like, are they really qualified to sell something that's more specialized?
Well, just to be honest, like again, like when we started, we thought that like back in 2020.
Oh, really?
Of course, like that's one of the learnings. Like so we thought like, yeah, payment, we can add that one service. Like, yeah, and we will integrate with the bank. They will do the settlement. And it's easy, like a very nice lie. But in reality, like we learned that very quickly that no, you need to have a very dedicated team. It's a complete different requirements. But that's again the beauty of working in startup. Like you always need to see, reflect, learn, and reflect quickly. You cannot like wait like 1 year and then do this shit. Like of course, like once we learned that, we did the needed adjustments in our business model, and we have the right team.
Yeah. So when you added payments, which part was most difficult to you as a CFO? Was it the forecasting of the model? Was it how to staff the sales reps? Was it the investment level that was required to build it, and squaring your head around what like the R&D payback period would be?
So I'll be very honest here. So like again, coming from telecommunication background, I have like very good understanding of subscriptions. Like in telecommunication, that's what we sell, like different packages and different subscriptions. So again, it was very easy for me to understand what's going in the SaaS business. However, when we added the payment, all the concepts like were new. So working with the GMV and GPV and like the take rates and the bank's margin and the settlement time and like instant settlement, and even like, again, anticipating these forecasts, like all was new for me. It's something that we have learned from on the job. Like it's something new. But that's also why you should always start small and understand what you're doing, and then you start scaling the business. So for me, when I started, it was like all new concept. It was for me and for the company, of course. But then I think like in a 6 months time, we nail it and like we start understanding exactly what we're dealing with, and it's become part of like our something that we are dealing with on a daily basis.
That was very honest of you, because I think there are a lot of CFOs out there who are like, I don't really know much about this, new revenue stream, and they don't want to admit it at first. They think they know everything, but I think there's also a value in having really good advisors. And if I did my research right, I think Naeem Ishak of Checker and formerly of Square and Circle is on your board, right?
Yes, 100%. So Naeem, I think like joined Foodics, like became a board member since 2019. And he is still like he is the board member now, and he's a great help for us. So in many concepts, like he worked with very much similar companies. So in the payment, in the SaaS business, in many other concepts, like even scaling the company, he always a great help. And that's something I definitely also advise people to have a strong advisors next to them. They need to educate themselves. Again, like back to honesty, like when I joined Foodics, there was a lot of concept related to fundraising and all of that. That was completely new for me. So
Yeah.
you have always to read, but it's also important to have a strong advisor next to you. So, for example, for us in Foodics, we are part of Endeavor. We are an Endeavor company. So, and like we are blessed to be have a huge network of advisors that we can always ask and refer to, and of course that helps a lot because like instead of doing the mistake and like then from your own mistakes, they will tell you, be careful, don't do that and do that and focus on this area and don't do that. So that's very important. It's always advisable to have a strong advisors next to you. And don't always ask. It's very important to ask. Don't be shy from asking.
People love to say there are playbooks for this, but then they get shy about asking for the playbook.
That's a big mistake. Like if you don't ask, you will never have the answer, correct? So once you ask, you will learn and then you will become the master.
Cool. Abdullah, I'm going to take you into what we call our long ass lightning round. So you're a successful guy, but I ask every guest, what's an example of something you've screwed up at work before?
So it's something related to my leadership style. So where like in my, like when I became like finance director of Omnia, I was like slow in dealing with underperformers. So I was like giving them a lot of chances and I think it's more of like being afraid from having that confrontation and like just firing those underperformers basically. So I giving a lot of chances, but then it was impacting the company. And then once I start learning that, Abdullah, you need to take this decision. Like you need to, once you give that enough chances to those underperformers, then that's it. Because like if you don't take these decisions, you are penalizing the company. So that's something I learned, that being always transparent with underperformers, dealing with it in a nice way as well, is something that I have to do.
And we're all human. Like we don't like that friction. I definitely try to avoid it as well. But it helps you get there when you start to think, who am I penalizing? Is it somebody on my team who's picking up the slack? Or is it actually rubbing off poorly on my reputation that I'm keeping somebody around?
100%. Like sometimes actually that's very important, like because you are like penalizing the company, but also you're penalizing yourself because like if you are depending on them, they will be like, for example, not handling a certain area, credit collection, for example. Like they might screw you there, like, and then you are responsible for that area. So it's also your personal reputation and the company. So, and like, you can always do it in a nice way. Like people are like, they don't like to deal with this one because it's associated with like all the negative emotions. But like, you can really do it in a nice way, in a professional way, highlight the problems, and you take the decision together with that underperformer, and then it's all done.
Cool. Next one I got for you. If you could tell your younger self something knowing what you know today, what would you tell him?
Join the startup industry earlier. I think I fit in the startup life more. I like the environment where I can have multiple hats rather than one hat. I like growing business. I like the business development concept. So as a CFO, like working in a startup, I have that opportunity, yes, to do what's required, what's expected from me as a CFO, taking care of all the reporting and the governance, but also taking care of business development. And that's, so I should not wait it until I'm 40 to move to startup life.
Yeah, but you found it eventually, which is good. Next one I got for you. Can you walk me through your finance software stack? What tools does your team use today to get the job done?
So we have Oracle NetSuite as like the backbone of the accounting system. Our billing system, we have the Salesforce. So we have the full Salesforce of like CRM and CPQ and the billing system. So it's our billing engine, which is again fully integrated with Oracle NetSuite, and that's very important. So always, like, it's hard to do work in this integration, but it will save a lot of time. We have Carta to manage all our shares, and Discern for our BI reporting tool.
That's awesome. What's the most recent tool you bought? Do you remember?
Discern,
Nice.
6 months ago.
Last one I got for you. What's the craziest thing you've ever had someone try to expense?
First of all, like, we are always operating in Muslim countries, and alcohol expense is always not acceptable, and like especially in our religion. So every now and then we see some people trying to sneak like in their bills some alcohol payments. Of course, like, I have a good accounting team like responsible to review these things, and they catch it, and of course we will not pay it.
That was a good one. Abdullah, this has been a total blast. Like, I'm obsessed with the industry that you're helping to push forward and innovate. And I love the career perspectives as well. And I totally agree that we as CFOs should be willing to take some career risk.
Thank you very much.
Run the Numbers is a mostly LLC production. Yelling an intro by Fat Joe. Artwork by some AI thingamajig. Podcast and video editing is done by Cleancast at cleancast.io. Nothing said on this podcast is intended to be business or investment advice. It's the sole opinion of me, a guy who feeds his dog too much ice cream and has a history of net operating losses, LOL. If you like this podcast, please hit subscribe. It would mean a lot to me. And also check out mostlymetrics.com. That's my newsletter where I explore business models and financial metrics. Thanks for riding with me. Share this with your friends. Peace.